This and all talks at the 2020 JavaScript for WordPress conference are brought to you in part by our sponsors Frontity and GoDaddy Pro. Frontity is the easiest way to create performant websites using WordPress and React. It connects both seamlessly so you can focus on building your site instead of all the tooling and configuration. Open source and free to use. GoDaddy Pro Hosting offers a robust suite of free tools to web developers and designers to help them save time managing all their clients and sites. Your free membership also includes advanced 24/7 technical support.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about building custom components for Gutenberg. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is creating a dynamic block with a custom component. So this is what I'm going to go through. First of all, I'm going to talk about what a custom component is. Then I'm going to just briefly go over setting up your tools for a block and creating a block before I then move on to how we extend a component to create a custom component. You can actually create a component without extending a component, but for this talk, just to keep it simple, I'm going to be extending a component, and then that component's going to get posted in Gutenberg. So starting off with what's a custom component. So basically, first of all, a component is a UI element in Gutenberg. And if you've done anything with Gutenberg, you know that it comes with a load of UI components. I've chosen here the text control, and that's just your text input. And this is how you would put that text control in your custom block that you were building. So I'm going to go through building a custom block as well for those of you that haven't. I'm just assuming no knowledge for this talk, so feel free to go and make a cup of tea if you've already done your own custom blocks and you know how to set up all your tools and that, and then come back for the custom component in about 10 minutes time. So as well as Gutenberg components, such as text control, select, button, there's a whole load, and they're all online and in the WordPress Git repository, so you can have a play and see what components exist. But we can also create our own components that can be imported into our custom blocks in the same way that the standard WordPress components can be imported in. So why would you want to do this? So you can extend the functionality of existing components, or as I said before, you can even create a whole new component. This can be imported into any of your custom blocks. And of course, that means that you don't have to keep writing the same code all the time. You can create a component once and it can be used in all of your blocks. So that's very useful. So I'm going to quickly go through setting up your tools for a block. So I use Webpack, but I will also briefly touch on WP scripts as well, because I know lots of people, and I think that's quite a sensible way to manage all of your dependencies. But I use Webpack because that's what I'm used to using. So to start with, you'll probably want to have NPM installed. And the reason why I say probably is because I was discussing with a friend of mine who said that they were put off of building things in Gutenberg because of all the tooling, all of the setting up. So I wanted to start off by saying that you can write all of your blocks in ES5. And these tools are really mostly for converting your modern JavaScript into something that's going to be supported by your browser. So there's no reason why you couldn't just use ES5 if that's what you're used to using, or if you just really don't want to get into setting up tools. But actually, it's much easier, I think, than people think. If you're used to working in PHP and you've used Composer, then it's going to be a similar thing using NPM. It's just a package manager. So to install NPM on Linux, and I'll go on to Mac OS in a minute. So it's just very simple. So apt-get update, and then apt-get install Node.js. If it's Linux, then it's install Node.js and not Node, and then apt-get install npm. Then after you've installed Node and npm, it's just worth checking what version. So Node.js -v, npm-v will tell you what versions you are installed, and once you see the versions, not only do you know that the versions that are installed, but you also know that you've successfully installed Node and npm. So then I know most of you use Mac, or most developers that I know in WordPress use Mac. So I would really recommend installing Homebrew if you don't already have it installed on your Mac, because it just makes everything else much easier. So install Homebrew, and the instructions are on the Homebrew website. Then brew install Node, this time Node, not Node.js. And then check that Node, that should actually just say Node-v and npm-v. So that was me just mistyping there. So everything you need to build your plugin, all of your dev dependencies will be in your package.json file. I've put a little link down the bottom of the slide, so it will tell you everything that can go into your package.json. But just to keep it simple, what I'm going to be using here is Babel and Webpack CLI, just so that I can run things from the command line. And what you want is transform React.js, JSX, and Babel loader, Babel core. I think all of these are probably handled as well in WP scripts, which I'll come to later, but this is just how I do it. So any packages you want to add to your plugin, you run npm install, whatever the package name, save dev, and that adds it to your dev dependencies. Once you've added the dev dependencies, you'll need to run npm install in your terminal to install all of your packages that you need. Then another thing that's useful and important in npm is your start and build. So start, you just run npm start to watch your files when you're in development mode, and that watches for any changes. And then when you want to build, ready for production, npm run build. So just for those of you that aren't familiar with Webpack and Babel, I just thought I'd quickly go through what those do as well. So Webpack is used to bundle your JavaScript files for usage in a browser, and you configure that in your webpack.config.js. So things that I thought were probably important to know for Webpack is your entry. That's where your block code is. So that's where it goes to look for your code, and output, that's where you want your files compiled to. So, and then we've got rules here, and in this config, we're just basically saying if it's JS, then we want you to do stuff with it, but ignore any node modules, because there's a lot of JS files in there that we want to ignore. And all of this, as I said, is to convert your JSX into ES5. So it is worth knowing that you can skip all of this and just write in ES5 if that's how you feel more comfortable, and or if you just think I really don't want to have all the setting up. But like I said, it's actually easier to set up than I think a lot of people think. So I would definitely, I find that it's definitely worth just spending a little time setting up your tools. I think that JSX makes your code actually much easier to maintain. And of course, it means that you're writing in modern JavaScript. So, and that's what Babel does. Babel allows us to write in modern JavaScript, and then we'll compile it to a supported version so that it works in whatever browser you want it to. So, and we configure this in the .babel rc. And this is just really simple here. It basically is just saying that we just want to use Babel transform React JSX. The thing that's different here from just writing something in React is we have this WP element, and the element is just an abstraction layer on top of React. And the reason for that is in theory that if for some reason you wanted to stop, or WordPress wanted to stop using React, then you don't have to, you still have all of your WordPress elements. So again, future proofing, or it's a good idea to have an abstraction layer, because then you can swap out what runs underneath in theory. So I wanted to touch on WP scripts. Full disclosure, I haven't used WP scripts myself. I've used Webpack, but for WP scripts, you just need to install one npm module. So that's really nice. And again, it's just npm install WordPress scripts, and then save to dev. That will save it to your package .json. It does require Node 10.0.0 or later, and npm 6.9.0 or later. So if you've just installed Node and npm, you shouldn't have any problems, but you can check the versions, as I said previously. So this is configured in the same way as if you're using Webpack, and that is in the package JSON. So that's just an example there of start, WP script start, so that you type it into your terminal, npm WP script start, npm WP scripts build, the same as you would with Webpack. So it occurred to me at this point that I don't have many images in my talk, so I just thought I shall put an image in there just to give you a break from all the text. So now I'm going to just quickly go over building a custom block, just for if anyone hasn't actually tried to build a custom block yet. Again, I'll try and go through this quickly, but not too quickly. So first of all, and this is in your PHP, you want to enqueue your block script. So that's the same as you would enqueue any script. So if you go to the Gutenberg handbook, this will kind of explain all of the steps. But as I said, it's basically the same as enqueuing any JavaScript in WordPress, for those of you that are familiar with enqueuing scripts in WordPress. I like to define my block attributes as a constant, but you don't have to. I'll show you where you can put those in. But sometimes if you've got lots of attributes, I quite like having them defined separately. And then as well, you can use them in other functions. For example, I just did a project where we were using shortcodes and blocks. And so we wanted to use the same attribute defaults across both. So it was quite nice to have those defined as a constant. So then register your block. So here we have, important points here are your namespace block name. So that needs to be a unique name for your block. So it's probably a good idea to have your plugin name and then the block name. So we've got, these are the defaults, the attributes that we defined earlier. I shall go over a minute what those attributes are. Those are like the defaults, but in your block. But I shall explain actually when I come to that. This is so before that there was the editor script, which was the calls your block JavaScript file, and then callback function. So in this we have a render callback because this is going to be a server-side rendered or a dynamic block. So now this is where, so we're out of PHP now and we're going into JavaScript. So this is how I start my JavaScript for a block. So So first of all, I've got my function with a WP, which someone asked me, why do I do it like that? And it's really just a convenience. And I'll show you in a minute why I do it like that. But my block code goes in between here. You don't have to do it like this. There are examples on the Gutenberg handbook where you can do it in a different way and import components in. So this is why I use WP, because then I can define the constant register block type, WP blocks, server-side render, WP text control, that comes from WP components, etc. So at the top of your block, you want to define all of the constants. So those are all of the things from the WordPress that you need to make your custom block work. So in inspector controls, that's very important because we're going to be looking at those in particular in the editor. So then we want to register our block, which is the namespace block name that we saw previously. So in this example, it's just my plugin block. Then the title of the block, that will come up in your editor so that you know what it is, and you can add a little icon. They're dash icons, but you can actually add icons out of dash icons. And then the category, this is going in widgets, but there's also layout, common blocks. So just wherever you think your custom block sits comfortably and where it's useful and where it's easy to find. So then you want to look at the edit area, and this is everything that's going to appear in your post edit page. So that's in your admin pages of your WordPress site. So what we're going in, what's going in here is, first of all, is the attributes which we defined earlier, and we set them as a constant, and then return, that's everything that you see in the WordPress editor. So here we're using server-side render. So we just get the attributes, which is going to be the heading and the post for this example. And then, so the server-side render is going to be the preview of the content in the post editor. And then the inspector controls are everything that's going to appear in the block sidebar. So that's on the right-hand side of your post edit screen. So I'm going to add two controls to the block sidebar. Text control, which is really just a text input, and that's a standard WordPress component. And then post options list, which we can use to select a post. And that's going to be our custom component, whereas the text control is just the standard WordPress component. So we also want, if I come back here, you can see on change, update heading, and in the post options list, on change, update content ID. So that would be the post ID that's updated there. So, and then this is where we tell it to, this is where we update those. So we just set the attributes here. So we set the new heading value and we set the new post ID value. Like I said, I've kept this about, this is about as simple, I think, an example as I can get, hopefully. So, and then for the save, and save is everything that appears front end. So for this, we don't really need anything in there because we're using server-side render. Right, so now, hopefully everybody that knew all of that stuff, setting up scripts and creating a custom block, they've come back with their tea, and now we can have a look at extending a Gutenberg component. So what I'm going to be looking at extending is the select component, so the WordPress select component. And this is the custom component in action. So we've got, you can see that this is the custom block. You've got the block title, which is one of the, that's just the text input, and then down at the bottom you can see that there's a select with options, and these are posts that it can select from. Right, so just this is still in your custom component JavaScript file. So I just wanted to focus in to show you the post options list. So you can see there that it's just treated exactly the same as any other component. You can add the label, the value is updated from the attribute which you put into the which is what you select, and it returns a post ID. And that's imported in the same way that you can import any component from WordPress. So except for we're importing it from a specific folder. So I just wanted to show you how you could call that in. And of course, you can call in as many components into your custom blocks as you like. And you can also call that component in to any of your custom blocks. So what I have is like a folder in my plugin with just all the different components, and I can just import them into the individual block files as and when I want to use them, in the same way that I can import a WordPress component in. So this is now a new file. This is now your component file. So you declare your WordPress dependencies exactly the same as you would do in your custom block. So because we're extending select control, so we've got select control there. We've also got with select, and that's how you get data in to your component, and with dispatch is how you save. But for this example, I won't be using with dispatch, but I thought it was worth mentioning because with select and with dispatch are both really, really useful, and they're actually really, really simple to work with. So that's really nice. So this is our post option list, which extends component. And this is going to be our custom component that gets posts by IDs. It can be more complicated than that. This is based on an example where I selected the posts, a subgroup of posts by post meta, but I wanted to keep this talk quite simple, just to get you sort of started with working with custom components. So first of all, so we have render. So that's everything that you're going to see in the component. So again, we want our constants. So our constants in this case, label, that's self-explanatory, value and on change. These can all be tweaked at the block level. Multiple is really nice in a select component because it means that you can have a multi-select. For this example, I set it as false because we just want to select one post, but you can actually use it for a list of posts. So you can have a select with a list of posts. So, and then in the select control, I've just defined it so that multiple label, value, on change and options, well, not the options, but the others are going to be configurable from inside your custom blocks. So in one block, you can use this same component for a multi-select or a single select. So like to keep it as generic as possible in your custom component. I like to keep it as generic as possible so that it can be more flexible when it's in my custom blocks. Oh, right, cool. So that's your select control, and then I've had to sort of truncate the code. In a minute, I'm going to bring up actually all of the code because I know that it's quite hard to follow where this goes on. But outside of what you render, you also want to define a couple of constants. You want your apply with select, which is going to contain your get entity records, which is basically querying posts. So in this example is just going to return all posts of post type post, but you can use custom post types. You can also have anything that you can in a post query. So order by, you can get it by parent. Most of the query parameters you can find in the WordPress REST API docs. And then this is what we want to return just for this example, just all of the posts that are either published or scheduled. And then you want to combine them into a higher order component. This component just has apply with select, but you can also have, which is just with select, which is the get entity records. And then, of course, if you wanted to save data to WordPress, then you also have with dispatch. And then we've exported this out as post options list. And because we've exported it out, that's how we can import it into our custom block. So going back into what actually appears in your sidebar, we've got the options here. So basically, this is just getting all of the posts of however many they are and putting them into an options list. The value is the post ID and the label is the post title. And then we just add them to a list of options that's then returned to our component. And this is a nice to have while you're waiting to load posts. So if there are no posts, kind of just have loading posts. And then if for some reason there are no posts in WordPress, or if there are no posts of that particular post type, then it's probably a nice idea to just return the message, no posts to select. I'm going to briefly, hopefully, just bring up everything all together. So I'm just going to slowly scroll down and show you everything all in one. So here you have your constants at the top, your WordPress dependencies. Then we have the post options list component here. So this has your constants here, such as label, whether it's a multiple or not, value on change posts. These are the messages that appear in your select while you're waiting for your posts. This is your options list that comes up in your select. This is where it pushes those options to your options list. This is your select control. This is obviously what we've based our post options list on. And then down here we have fetch the post by ID. You'll get entity records there. This is your query that you're using. And this is what you return. And then here is where we've exported the higher order component. So, hopefully going back to the right screen. So that I zoomed through that much, much faster than I thought that I would. So thank you very much for listening to me waffle on. And I wonder if anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much, Dan, for that talk. That was very interesting. And yes, we do have 2 questions that are waiting for you.
Cool. Oh, should I stop sharing my screen? Sorry, this is a new.
It's okay.
Cool.
Great. Felicia is asking, is there an advantage to including your block as part of a theme rather than creating the block in a custom plugin?
I'm not sure if so is there an advantage of including?
Your
I'm not sure
block.
if I understand. I'm not sure if I understand the question. Rather than using, do you mean, is there advantage to using your own script rather than, because I know there's lots of plugins now where you can create custom blocks. I know advanced custom fields are they have a plugin that means that you create custom blocks without actually having to build them. Is that what that question means, or
We could have Felicia, if you're listening, could you clarify in the comments if that's what you're referring to?
I mean, the advantages of kind of the advantages, I suppose, of writing your own custom blocks. If there's a reason to add a block via plugin, I suppose the advantages are the advantages of writing any plugin. I don't think that just because you can write a plugin that you should. If you have a plugin that means that you can create the block that you want without you writing any code, then I think that that's great. But obviously, the advantages to writing your own custom block is that you can have exactly what you want. If there's a way of doing it faster by using a really good plugin from a plugin author that you trust, and it gives you exactly what you want, then I don't think that there's anything wrong with using that. Like I said, I know that Advanced Custom Fields have brought out their kind of Gutenberg blocks, and everyone that I know really thinks that kind of that's amazing. I haven't used it yet, but I absolutely think that that if it's going to save you time in a project and it's a really good plugin from a really good plugin author, then absolutely I think use that. But if you need something custom, then that's the advantages. The same as writing any plugin, I guess. It's the right tools for the right job. If you need something custom, then code it yourself. If there's someone that's already doing something better than you could do, or as good as you can do, but it's going to save you time, then, like I said, it's using the right tools for the right the right job.
So Diane, she's adding comments in the comment section. She said, you can see the comments, right?
Right. So no, a plugin with custom code, not yes. So is there a reason to add a block via plugin than via theme? Oh no, instead of a plugin with custom code. Does she mean why extend a component rather than writing? Sorry, rather than writing your own. You don't have to extend. You don't have to extend a component, but there are several components in there that you can use as a basis. And again, if you're basically using something that exists already, that's going to save you time. Again, if what you're doing is custom, then yes, then write your own code. But if you want to extend a select, then there is already a component. I think she means is the benefit of loading a code from a plugin. Right. Okay. Why was I enqueuing in the plugin rather than in the theme? I tend to put all of my blocks in plugins, and that is just because I tend to keep as much as possible themes for presentation and plugins for functionality. You could that's kind of how I was always told really that you should do things. Keep your functionality in a plugin. The reason is that you can change functionality, you can change plugins, you can add and remove, you can change themes, and still have all the functionality. So the advantages of keeping your functionality, and the reason why I like to have my blocks in plugins rather than in a theme, is because then you can change the themes, and you still have all the functionality. So
great. Thank you for answering that, Diane.
Yes. Sorry, Felicia. Yes. My blocks are always in plugins, and so that enqueue script, that was in a plugin. So that was enqueued from a plugin.
Great. We have another question for you from Will. Is asking if the code in your demonstration will be publicly available.
Yes. I'm actually going to do a repo and put it on GitHub, and then I'll share that on Twitter, and then I'll at JS for WP so people can have a dig in, and awesome. Have a play, and then kind of like download it and add your own stuff. So my plan is, there just wasn't enough time because I only knew I was doing this about a week ago. So
you did amazingly well. I think you were pretty explicit with your explanation. So thank you very much, Dan. Does any other person have questions for Dan? You can always reach out on Twitter if you have more questions for her later on. Nope. Yes. Okay. So I think Dan could still spend 2 more minutes with us to see if somebody else has a question for her.
I like Dave saying it's nice to revisit that themes should be primarily for presentation. I have a friend that does argue this point with me, but it really is. I think it's really worth keeping functionality and presentation separately, because, like I said, people tend to really change their themes more often. So yeah. Really, I believe that we should, themes should be kind of the way everything looks, and your CSS and how everything's arranged, and plugins for functionality. But I know that my friend who doesn't agree with me is watching this, so I'm expecting angry tweets. Thank you, Ron. It was very short notice, which was probably why it was much shorter talk than I intended.
Thank you very much, Dan. So thank you again for being here on such a short notice. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much. And like I said, I will get that repo online so that people can have a play, and probably probably easier when you see it to know what on earth I was going on about. But if you do have any questions, then do reach out to me on Twitter. My DMs are open as well. So